It's been a long day. I have a son named Jack that is 14. He is a horrible picky eater, so getting lunch out on the town is a nightmare most of the time. Now I had all the kids with me to go visit a relative in the hospital. Everyone got grabbed out of school for it. The hospital was a 3-hour drive and we went up this morning. By lunch everyone was starving, so we stopped by Chick-fil-A. There is a trend of putting the mac and cheese on the sandwich with a sauce. Jack mentioned this and I told him I will not buy him more food if he does it, and he doesn't like it. Well, he did it and he hated it. Now everything was touching, so he couldn't just eat the sandwich after taking it off. I didn't buy him more food like I said, and he didn't eat his concoction that he made. After that we drove back home and he was really hungry. My wife came home and he started telling her how I starved him. We got an argument for not buying him more even though we could afford it. Both of them think I'm a huge jerk for this. AITA, should I have just bought more? He doesn't have sensory issue and he is only allergic to cats. We had him tested. If he doesn't find the taste up to his liking, he won't eat it. This includes leftovers. Same meal he liked before isn't worth eating as a leftover. Guys, this kid's has been tested. The school checks for being on the spectrum. He's not on it. Yes, I know what off-read is. He doesn't have it. Comment 1. NTA, that said, when a picky eater tries something else, that is brave. It's a fine line between encouraging expanding and discouraging expansion of his diet. You might try ordering something you know he likes for yourself, not making a big deal out of it, so if he doesn't like what he tasted after he got his order, then you can offer to exchange. Makes you both heroes. Comment 2. NTA, sometimes it is not about money, it is about teaching a lesson, especially with kids. He was given the consequences of his actions before he made his decision. He chose to make that decision anyway. He could have cut off a quarter of the sandwich and put the mac and cheese on the small part, then had the rest to eat, if it went wrong. He chose all or nothing instead. He will never learn about consequences, if he does not have to deal with them. Number 14-year-old is going to starve to death, for missing one meal. It is not like he missed a week's worth of meals, it was one. Your wife needs to learn to stop caving to a child. He will remain picky forever. Comment 3. Yes. I love the fries and you should have enjoyed the meal. Your son. He needs to learn a lesson. You did not refuse him food, you bought him food, you told him not to mix his food, that he wanted, but he did. Jack refused to eat the food he wanted, because of his actions that he was warned against. Jack is unaware of consequences and your wife is not helping. He was hungry only because of his own actions. If he was a picky 5-year-old, then that's different. The kid is 14. He is old enough to understand. Too bad your wife isn't. Comment 4. For the vast majority of the world's population, you would be a huge asshole for allowing perfectly good food to be thrown away because you ordered something you didn't like, and now it was touching. And yet, people will insist it's child abuse because a teenager had to go 3 hours without eating. Mai, 30 weeks, Sil, 33 weeks, just announced her first pregnancy. Me and my husband, her brother, already have a 2-year-old and her twin sister already got a few kids, so she was the last of us childless. Here comes the twist, we lost our second born in July on their birth, in an absolute unpredictable way. We personally don't wait until a certain week to announce a pregnancy because life is unpredictable and you have no guarantees anyway. So we announced this pregnancy way before week 12 and her exact words were, "You're pretty brave to announce the pregnancy that early." The birth of said child was also the reason we weren't able to attend her wedding, which just happened on the same day, a 4-hour drive away. We didn't spread the news about our son's death on that day though. She announced her pregnancy at a little get-together that originally took place to celebrate her and her twin sister's birthday. Apparently she wasn't pregnant with one children but twins, but lost the child early into pregnancy. And she was openly happy about it. She started listing all the reasons she was glad that she didn't have to buy everything twice and didn't have to do twice the work act. I was sitting across the table and I didn't even know how to react. First of all, of course, her pregnancy announcement triggered some feelings of jealousy and I would have wished for her to tell us beforehand and not in a room full of people. But I'm not mad about that or anything, although I find it a bit insensitive. On the other hand, her happiness about losing a child left me speechless. I mean, I guess I kinda get her train of thoughts, but I think some thoughts are inside thoughts, and I must admit I felt offended about being confronted with her reaction to child loss in that kinda way. Anyway, neither me nor my husband got up to hug her or congratulate her, and she later on texted my husband that she wasn't happy about the way we acted. Comment 1. NaH, we all react to trauma differently. Your shock in that moment was 100% valid. I'm sure anyone would struggle to be congratulatory when another person is actively celebrating something that caused them immense trauma. On the other hand, your Sil is dealing with a very similar kind of loss, and if talking herself into being happy about only having one child is her way of coping, that's valid too. Ultimately, you're two women, family members, who have had to deal with the same/similar very difficult situation. I hope you can explain your reaction, calmly. After suffering a loss herself, I'm sure she'll be able to understand, at least a little. And while it sounds like she's in the denial phase of grief, I hope you'll be able to be there for her as she deals with her own loss, too. Comment 2. It's not necessarily a way of coping. For many women, early miscarriages are difficult, and I'm glad more women feel comfortable talking more openly about that, but for many women, it truly is no big deal. In telling women it's okay to be heartbroken, I think a lot of people have lost sight of the fact that it's also okay to not give a shit or even be thankful. Comment 3. NaH. You're allowed to be uncomfortable and upset and process that in your own way. She's allowed to be excited and announce her pregnancy in her way. Not everyone considers a fetus to be a person, I don't, so losing one, especially very early on, and still being pregnant may legitimately be a relief to her. It would be to me. 2 babies at one time is no joke. You don't have to agree or approve, but the fact that you don't agree doesn't make her wrong. I think for most women, losing an early pregnancy is very different from losing a child during birth, and it's unrealistic to compare the two as equal tragedies. But, given how recently you lost your child, I can fully understand why her relief would seem offensive to you. Comment 4. I am absolutely baffled by the YTA. You lost a child you carried full term 3 months ago. First of all, I am so sorry for your loss. You handled it like a pro. Way better than I could ever do. At 3 months postpartum I am still an emotional wreck. You have to also deal with the greatest loss someone has to deal with. Your Sil showed zero empathy for you and your loss. That you managed to stay quiet and not be overwhelmed with grief is so strong of you. I would not have been able to. Sil has every right to be happy and deal with her own loss in her own way. But it would have suited her to do without you being present and let you have time to come to terms with all this news. I am so sorry this happened to you. I 37 have been with my wife since our senior year in high school. We have 6 kids between the ages 7-15. I work Monday to Friday, 14 hours 3 days a week, 12-hour 2 days. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. Before I get the hate comments as I've seen in the past, I am extremely grateful. My days off, I take the kids out and my wife has the day to herself where she goes out and I handle chores. I always remind my wife, and take her out on date nights a few times a month on my days off. My sister comes by and helps out some days throughout the week. We had a financial crisis earlier this year, which resulted in me having these extra hours. It's completely necessary. 4 of our kids do extracurricular, we have to pay for and other necessities. My wife has recently been asking me to cut back hours, which has been causing arguments. It's simply impossible at the moment. We have young twins, and earlier this week they got the flu, which spread all throughout our home, which had the kids home from school for majority of the week. I could not call off, but it left my wife extremely stressed out. One of our children has autism, and when they are sick it is a very big crisis in the house with tantrums. I felt horribly, but I couldn't call off. Basically today my wife shouted at me for over an hour for refusing to take less hours, because she is so stressed. She said I get to escape at work, and she has a household to run. I tried to explain that I'd love more than anything to be home more, but I couldn't, but she continued yelling, saying I was the problem. AITA? Comment 1. NaH. But if your wife is in the hospital with a breakdown, that will require you to take off work and be a financial burden as well. Something needs to give. You may have to look at dropping the extracurricular activities you pay for and looking at free activities, going over your budget to see if there is any way for you to cut hours, otherwise maybe paying a sitter a few hours a week to give your wife a break, or a mother's helper so it's less expensive. Also, are you in the States? Have you looked into in-home therapies and respite for your autistic child through your state? Info. You mention a financial crisis, then mention extracurricular activities for 4 kids and other necessities. What was the crisis? What exactly increased in cost that you had to work these hours? Comment 2. I don't know, man. 66 hours a week doesn't sound like an escape to me. That sounds like hell. On your next day off, can you 2 sit down and go through your budget? Maybe you can work less hours if sacrifices are made in other areas and you both are willing to do that. But also going through the budget can also reinforce why you're working those additional hours, and it also can help you go over everything with a fine-tooth comb to be able to see, do you really need HBO Max? Obviously, just an example, and where else corners can be cut. NTA. Comment 3. I can't decide between NAH and ESH. Honestly, it sounds like you're both living in hell. This is one of the risks with having so many kids, one financial issue, and you're in this position. Obviously you have the kids, so you can't change that now, but you both willingly had this many kids knowing that kids are expensive and get sick often. This is just an awful situation for everyone, and unfortunately it won't last. Something's gotta give here. Someone will blow up, or perhaps worse. Something needs to change, or there will be serious consequences. Have you thought about your own health between the work hours and emotional stress? Comment 4. NAH. I don't, either of you is in the wrong. For you, it's impossible to take fewer hours because of your shared financial situation. You're working to provide your family with the necessities and keep a roof over your head, you can't sacrifice that. For her, she's stressed and overwhelmed from taking care of sick kids all day. It's understandable that she's worn out. But in the end, you're both working all day and need help and understanding from each other. Moving forward, I think the best thing to do is to have better communication and some sort of accommodation. She needs to not yell at you because it's not all about her, you are stressed as well. For the accommodation, does your sister have more free time to help her? Do you have parents that can come over? Neighbors, that you trust, even? It seems like things won't get better unless she somehow gets more help.